Good afternoon and welcome to AUSA's Noon Report. Now, we certainly wish that we could all be together at AUSA, but under current conditions, that's just not possible. So we've crafted this series of events to allow us to connect virtually and bring you discussions with senior defense leaders talking on topics of important and current interest. We're very, very glad that you've joined us today, and we appreciate your continued support. I want to particularly thank our sponsor today, SOS International, or SOSI, and especially SOSI's president, Mr. Julian Setien, for their support of this edition of AUSA's Noon Report. SOSI has been an AUSA national partner since 2017, and we thank them for their tremendous support to the Army and to AUSA. Our guest today is Dr. Bruce Jette, who has served as the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology since January of 2018. He's well known to all of you, as evidenced by the very large number of participants in today's event. Dr. Jette serves as the Army Acquisition Executive, the Senior Procurement Executive, the Science Advisor to the Secretary of the Army, and the Army's Senior Research and Development Official. He also has principal responsibility for all Department of the Army matters related to logistics. Dr. Jette leads the execution of the Army's acquisition function and the acquisition management system. He's responsible for appointing, managing, and evaluating program executive officers and managing the Army Acquisition Corps and Army Acquisition workforce. A decorated veteran of 28 years of active duty, Dr. Jette retired after a highly successful military career that included several armor and cavalry commands, as well as operational deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kuwait. He is, to put it quite simply, a highly experienced, dedicated soldier for life. If during the conversation today you have some questions for Dr. Jette, please use the Q&A tab located on the right side of your screen. Now, please join me in a warm welcome for the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology, Dr. Bruce Jette. Dr. Jette, welcome.
Thank you, General Ham. Thank you to all the people who have decided to log in. I thank you very much for an opportunity to get a chance to just interact and get out of the Pentagon. So I wanted to make a couple of quick comments and then open it up to questions. I'm sure that you don't need me yammering about all sorts of topics that are not of specific interest to you. So we'll get to the questions quickly. I did want to give you some insight into a little bit of the environment we're still working in. Of course, you all know we're in the COVID environment, and that's had an effect on us. But and I know a lot of people who are members of AUSA, particularly in the corporate world, are people we work with in ASALT on a daily basis. So this is a chance for me to talk to them as well. The first thing, ASALT remains the lifecycle manager for all our systems. And in fact, as we work, and I know people wonder what's the relationship between ASALT and AFC and how do those things work together? And I always say it like this. I mean, we may pull and tug with each other sometimes, but the whole idea is to see if we can do that the best across these boundaries, from requirements to sustainment to divestiture. I even have a second handshake that goes over to AMC in particular. We've worked extensively on things like transition to sustainment and ultimately to divestiture, so we can free up some funding so it comes back here to the front end of the whole system. As the ASALT, I started the requirements. However, I've been given an opportunity because of this handshake for all the acquisition team to be able to contribute to the requirements side of things and go all the way to the sustainment and divestiture side of things. We have 685 programs. I know that within that are the 31+3. The 31+3 are clearly remain the Army's primary focus. But those other programs that are a part of the 685 are still critically important to us, and many of the 31+3 can't be enabled without them. So for those of you that might not be on the 31+3, it doesn't mean you're not critically important to us. Our modernization priorities have been focused on the top 6. And then, of course, from the top 6, we generate the 31+3. COVID. So what about COVID? The first thing I want to make sure that I do to everybody who has contributed to the Army during this tough period is, first, the Army remains committed to your safety and health. And that's paramount as we try to look at how we keep business going in this current environment. We know that there were challenges, particularly in the beginning of some of the lockdowns. How do we help you with clearing things with the state? I know Ellen Lord, Ms. Lord, was excellent in getting documentation and letters out that provided some flexibility, and in some cases contacted governors to try and make sure that the people were able to get to work. We've worked with industry, and the industry, you've done a great job at making available, making your workforce safe and healthy, and being able to manage people who had to come to work. It's very difficult to make a real product from your video teleconference position. We have people who can do that, and then we have many, many people who can't. And I just have to say personally, thank you to all of you for the amazing things that you've done to make that happen. And if there's any more assistance that you need from us, we definitely want to be a true teammate. We internally have continued to work on some of our own support for the troops. In a matter of just a month, we were able to make it so that the entire Army could test for COVID. The test came out. We got the equipment, we put it out to the field, we did an analysis. For example, how do you test people? When do you test people? How often do you test people? How do I make sure that I'm keeping clean once I get a cleaned group? This is a significant problem because we can't totally isolate, for example, a bunch of new recruits showing up at the recruiting battalion for basic training. So how do we handle those? And I know TRADOC has been an amazing partner in this. West Point's been an amazing partner in this as we've tried to be able to provide them equipment. We've even gone to the point where we have mobile labs that we can send out to supplement. We're leveraging our vaccine lab. We have one. It's part of a national capability. We primarily work through the HHS, but the vaccine lab works under the JBO Chem Bio. So in summary, I'd say, as far as I'm talking to industry about what they've done, they've taken advantage of all of these capabilities. They've taken advantage of many others, and what they keep doing is delivering. And I just really want to thank you for doing that. That's been great. Change enablers, some questions that I know that came down. We're working very hard on trying to enable change and improve culture. What do I mean by that? Our military is an amazing military. It knows how to get things done, and it does it effectively and quickly. It tends to do it within a context of what they knew, to try and provide them opportunity to see new fronts. It takes a little bit more work. And so I'll often say, you know, if you teach Pavlov's dog to salivate at the bell, if you're trying to get him to bark at the bell and you keep ringing the bell and he kind of drools when he barks, you better get used to it. So we gotta work our way there. So we are working at a number of things to try and improve culture and give people a greater chance to learn and grow. I want to finish up my remarks real quickly here. So coming up this week is June 14th. June 14th, we celebrate the Army's birthday. It's 245 years of defending and protecting America. I am just so proud to be a part of that, having been one for 28 years. and now again, having the opportunity to serve in this position has been, I think that when they gave me the honorable, that it should be honored. Because that's what I feel, is I'm just honored to be able to do the things I do. Happy birthday to the Army. No matter what the challenges are, the Army is here to support this country.
Good.
General Ham.
Well, thanks, Dr. J. Thanks for that introduction and those overview. Certainly a lot on your plate these days, and I think all of us join you in looking forward to celebrating the Army's 245th birthday. If I could go back to your initial comment about the Army operating under the COVID-19 pandemic, and particularly in your area of responsibility, how has the procedures, the policies that the Army has implemented in working with industry, how has that affected schedule? And could you talk a bit about vulnerability of the supply chain, and particularly as it applies to small businesses?
Sure. So let me give you, the Secretary and the Chief in particular put together the task force where essentially every day, particularly in the beginning when we were trying to get our feet on the ground, we were going 2 times a day. We were having task force meetings. Video teleconference, not everybody in the same room, always a 6-foot gap between us at least. And what we were doing is making sure we had the foundation for what was necessary to keep the Army functional. In the area of acquisition, we would also have a similar one that was happening twice a day and going up to OSD level. So all pieces focused in on what we're supposed to be doing to try and support the Army and continuing our missions in each area. In our area in particular, I had my essentially my 3-shop focus in on support by the industry players. So how many industry, we've got primes, and we got a lot of subs, and we had a lot of small industry that we could reach out to. So how are they doing? What are they doing with the COVID response? Do they have problems? If so, what are they, and can we help in any way? I will tell you the large primes in particular, unparalleled support. I had a 62-page daily report on exactly what primes, subs, and small companies, what their circumstances were, how much difficulty we're having, what those difficulties were, whether they could be mitigated, and whether there was anything that we could do for them. And it was kept up literally on a daily basis. So everybody really did line up to try and take care of things. I think the biggest challenges we had were with the small companies in the supply chain. And primarily the problems they had was, I have 12 people in my organization. They're all in close proximity, and one of them comes down positive. The whole place shuts down for 2 weeks. And in some cases, they'll leapfrog, and we had some suppliers down for a month or 2. We worked with the primes, and we worked with those subs to help them out of that. And I would say it's interesting. I have a phone conversation with all the staffers, similar to this, but no video, once a week. And they're kind of surprised at how we've been able to weather and continue delivering. I think one of your points was, what about what things have been hindering us a bit? And the biggest one there is testing. Been working closely with General Murray on trying to accommodate the testing issues. In the case of testing, you have to put a lot of people in the same place. They have to be close. They're inside of a TOC. A TOC's not made for the 6-foot gap. So how do we do testing? And then I'm going to put testers inside. That makes it even more confined. So we have moved some of the testing to the right, but essentially the only, as General Murray says, FUE, first unit equipped, we haven't moved any of those. We'll probably move a couple of milestone Cs around, but generally testing and delivery have either remained on schedule, or we have a makeup plan. It's the testing that's the long pole in the tent, and we're accommodating that now.
Okay, good. Thanks. So just one more question from me, and then I know we've got some questions building up from the audience. So a broader question, Dr. Jette, if you just step back for a moment, as you mentioned, the 680 plus programs, the 31 plus 3 seem to get certainly the prioritization and the attention. Must the Army have all of the, or each of the 31 plus 3 programs on schedule in order to deliver the multi-domain operations capability that the Army has stated that it requires? Or is there some prioritization within the 31 plus 3? And how do you do that in what most people are projecting is a flat or declining overall top line for defense?
It's a great question and a difficult one. The 31 plus 3 remain the top priority. There are a number of studies that are going on within the building, out at AFC in particular. They're the requirements side of the house, them and TRADOC. So as they try to map out where we're headed into the future, prioritization has to be set by them, AFC, TRADOC, 357, on behalf of the chief and the secretary. At this point, we're remaining on schedule with the 31 plus 3. A second thing in the background that we are doing is taking a look at a holistic model, economic model of the Army. Our general behavior pattern is to look 2 years out. One of the things we're trying to do is say, what is the life cycle of a particular capability? How does that fit together, and how does it remain affordable in the long term? So we are taking some steps to provide additional data in case there's a prioritization that does come down the road due to changes in the budget profiles.
We'll turn now to the first of the questions from our audience. Thank you for doing that. And again, if you have questions, go to the Q&A tab on the right side of your screen. So Dr. Jette, the first question: the Army's main combat systems are 30 to 40 years old, obviously with several upgraded versions. As the Army acquisition executive working on the development and acquisition of the Army's future combat capabilities, what steps are you taking to make sure the right decisions are being made for soldiers of the future? And what about the next generations of Army acquisition executives who will be responsible for upgrading these systems in the future?
So we do have 30 to 40-year-old vehicles, and in fact, one of the things that we've taken a look at is as we picture where we're going. In fact, I just had a discussion on this morning. As we look at where we're going, we're looking at the base underlying component, say a vehicle structure. It's going to have a 30 to 40-year life. But if we don't think about how it's going to be enhanceable, upgradable, modified for different uses over a period of time, we're missing things because we do keep them for 30, 40 years. If you remember back to World War II, and you're a bit of a historian, you'll see we were upgrading, we were basically changing vehicles every few months. We can't do that. We can't afford it. And of course, at that point, we were learning based upon the success of individual models. Instead, we're leveraging modeling, simulation, and various other testing protocols in order to get that base vehicle in place. We're spending a great deal of time on the engineering and analysis to make sure that the internal components are upgradable. Even in the internal workings of the program right now, we have a program, for example, looking at cabling. There are literally in a tank well over a couple of tons of cabling, all tremendously expensive and all very, very structured. So if you want to change something, you're stuck with the cable. You have to recable large portions of it. How can we get to a network architecture that gives the freedom, particularly for industry? If you have a good idea and a new component, how do I get that in a vehicle without having to replace half of the components? So by getting this much more open architecture in place on these vehicles, we think that we're going to be able to keep them growing to the future over that 30 to 40 year period.
So somewhat related to that, another question from the audience. Can you talk about the agility and the timeliness, the speed? You and others, the chief and others have talked about the necessity of speed. how is that working in the current procurement cycle? Are we getting better? Are we getting faster? Are we keeping up with the speed of technology advances?
The short answer is yes and no. We have a large number of legacy systems, and the large number of legacy systems become something of a problem in trying to make sure that we can advance them forward as well. What we don't want to do is end up disconnected. So we have legacy units showing up on the battlefield with legacy systems, and then a new unit shows up with a future vehicle, and the two of them can't even interact. So how do we grow the current upgrades and enhancements to this open architecture as we develop and implement the open architecture in the newly developed vehicles? Then the two of them can stay more connected. So on the one hand, the new architectures, I'd say yes, we're growing quite well. On the existing systems, we get somewhat financially constrained on being able to implement those technologies, and those probably where a lot of the prioritization comes in.
Certainly, acquisition reform has been a topic for the past decade plus, and lots of DoD policy, but lots of legislation as well. So that's obviously a tough area to take on. Another great question from our audience, Dr. Jette. What do you think about when you think about cross-platform enablers, additive manufacturing, digital twin and thread technologies? How does that factor into your thinking about the future?
So let me hit the additive manufacturing and digital twin concept. So on nearly every vehicle that we have, or every piece of equipment we get, we end up building a P manual, a parts manual. So we have all the parts, and then we have provisioners, and the provisioners will then assign an NSN, a national stock number, to any one of those components. Then all of that, to include the mil spec level 3 drawings that came with them, go into a drawer someplace and then onto the website for the NSNs. So in G Army, if I want to order a part, I can look up an NSN, I can find the description, but I can't get to the drawings, and I certainly can't get to any three-dimensional objects. So what we're trying to do right now is get rid of, this is from beginning to end, this is the full breadth. I don't want level 3 drawings anymore. They were great in the 60s, but they're not of any significant value to me today. What I want is three-dimensional models that come with those, so that I can take those 3D models. If I want to create a three-dimensional drawing, I just hit print and it'll come out that way. But more importantly, I can take that and hand it to the advanced manufacturing, whether it be additive or subtractive or some of the other technologies that are out there. And I was just at Rock Island Arsenal last week. Take the methodology. With that machine, you can take a bar, cut a bolt, then it looks like this, and these are all the steps you take. Then you have to put it in an oven at 400 degrees for 16 hours so it's properly annealed. All that becomes a chunk of information which gets attached back to the NSN, so that if I'm out there in a unit in the field and I have that bar, I can make thousands of different types of bolts without having to have thousands of different types of bolts on stock. So the difficulty that we're wrestling with right now is, how do we bring all of this data together so that it's readily available and fully secure? And I just met with the TRADEC commander, or not TRADEC, AMC commander this morning over this very issue. But we're working it forward.
It certainly is changing the whole field of supply and distribution, the entire community of how the Army supports the force. So dramatic changes ahead, to be sure. Turning now to another question. It's a question about risk and about shared risk, and some of this, I think, goes into the determination of requirements and capabilities, and as contracts are finalized. And the question says, why should a company bid on a program when the estimated quantity of a particular item is uncertain. And the question asker suggests that shifts the risk almost entirely to industry rather than being a shared risk. Could you comment on that aspect of shared risk?
Well, so I was on the other side of the table just a couple of years ago. In fact, I came from industry to come in on this side. So I do understand the idea of what type of risk it is. I'll frankly admit that many of the people in the military who have fundamentally only been in the military don't understand all the words you have just asked. And I do want to tell you that I'm trying to be supportive for you in that way, because I think that if I can help people on this side of the table today understand what they're really asking, it'll help make better decisions. If the risk is totally on you and it makes no economic sense, I recommend you not answer the RFP. At sometimes challenges to RFPs are a good way for you helping me to make sure that people understand that this is too much risk we're asking of industry. However, I would also say that take a hard look at whether or not there's a way to mitigate the risk through proper management of your supply chain, proper management of prior stocking, management of workforce, and those type of things. So it's a difficult thing to try and answer. I will tell you that it's because it's very specific problem sets on both sides of the table. If it's a COTS item and you have a good supply chain, your risk is the investment it took you to answer the RFP and whether or not your organization can carry the overhead as it waits for those orders. Just price it correctly. And if it's not affordable, then I'd recommend you not go that path.
So one of the things that you have emphasized since assuming your current position has been to really try to open the dialogue with industry, to have this discussion, things such as draft requests for proposals. So there's a dialogue between you and industries who may be interested in that. How's that going, and how has that been perceived from the Army's perspective?
Oh, from the Army's perspective, I think it's going well. I think that the Army perceives it, particularly at the senior leader level, that it is going well. From my perspective, as the ASALT, I'm going to work off of some of the comments that I've heard from your industry partners. The door has been flung wide open, that no longer is it difficult to get to our PMs and PEOs, that there's a conversation that goes on, not just in preparation for answering some sort of an RFP or a draft RFP or something like that, but simply to have the dialogue. Why is that, in fact, important to me? Because I don't know everything to ask for, nor does AFC or trade components. So I do know that AFC has got a similar open door policy to be able to help educate them. We want to understand what industry has to offer that we may not be asking for, so that we can make sure that it's considered in the development of requirements and the potential method we approach a particular solution from. So as best I can tell, it's going well. I have an industry engagement this afternoon with the company. My assistant executive officer's in the back, so he'll probably cringe or you'll see something get thrown at me. But my door is open if you want to get in and see me. I do not block anyone. It doesn't mean I'm going to agree to something or buy something from you. That doesn't work like that. But helping me to understand things is always something I want to do. Now, I will tell you, there's a crowd at my door a lot of times, so it may take a while to get you in, but people do see me pretty much every week.
And I'll take this opportunity, a shameless plug for the Association of the United States Army. And I would tell you, when we can get back to doing in-person events and exhibitors at our events, Dr. Jette always comes. and he'll probably give a speech, but if I could probably take words from your mouth, that's not really the part of AUSA events that you enjoy and find most beneficial. It is that time engaging with exhibitors on the floor, and he and his team take a lot of time to do that. So we're looking forward to when we might be able to do that once again. You have talked today and in previous sessions, you've talked a lot about digital transformation. So how would you compare the Army's progress in digital transformation with what you see in the private sector?
So I think that particularly what we've endured just now, the COVID environment, has really just put a real energy spike into the middle of us trying to do some transformation. There were some technologies that we're supposed to have so that we could do video teleconferencing, and the Pentagon was working on trying to get it, and maybe next year, boom, all of a sudden we have it now. And we can't get it to work in the Pentagon. Boom, they figured out how to get it to work in the Pentagon. Couldn't get in my office because my office is a SCIF. Boom, they figured out how to do it. So some things, have come along very quickly that were readily available in the commercial technology side. So I'm very pleased with that. We do remain challenged in some areas because our systems are unique in many ways. In the commercial side of the world, using networks, phone systems, those type of things, nobody's trying to jam you. They may jam you, but they're not trying to jam you. And if they are trying to jam you, they're hunting down the jammer really quick, and it's going to be a low density. So we have to consider so many more things in making sure that we're covering all the bases with respect to some of the application of digital technologies, that it does remain a challenge for us.
So one last question, and we'll get close to the end of our programming here. Inappropriately, we'll usually start our questioning from Sidney Freeberg, but we'll close our questioning from Sidney Freeberg. Can you discuss, Dr. Jette, your thoughts about the long-term economic health of the Army? Are we trying to look beyond the statutory 2-year budget and the process 5-year budget cycles? How is that going? How do you think about that now, longer term for the Army?
So that's a great question, and it sort of ties back a bit to the discussion that the initial points that I was trying to make as I used my opening comments. So the ASALT, I've looked at. We wrestle with these 2-year bites, and really budgeting 1 year at a time, 2-year bites, looking at 6 years to our front, and after that we don't tend not to look terribly far. In the meantime, we've got some huge systems coming along that they're coming outside those windows. So how do I make sure that we're properly prepared? And remember again, I have 685 systems, only with 31 plus, only 34 of them are the major ones. So how do I make sure these things all line up correctly? I have to have a much longer view of the battle space, economic battle space. And so I'm working with the G8. In fact, we just had a meeting on this last week to pull out some of the models that were actually used more in the Cold War, that we sort of let wane a bit during all of our hasty operations for Iraq and Afghanistan. And in fact, next week I go up to West Point. They have an AUSA cell up there that specifically is focused on economics. And what the objective there is to work with the G8 and the economic cell up there to lay a foundations upon which we can take a serious look at what the long-term implications of owning a piece of equipment. Readiness is what we're focused on, because modernization is a long-term component of readiness. So I need to keep things ready. Now, when I switch over to modernization as the methodology by which I enable my readiness is an economic question. and a technology question. Is something ready, and can I afford to insert it? And that business requires us to have this long-term full understanding of the economics, which is what we're focused on trying to develop over the next year.
Good. Well, thanks for that. And thanks for all of your insights offered today. You know, we could probably go on for a couple more hours, but we certainly want to be respectful of your time and certainly of Dr. Jette's time. But these kinds of engagements, I think, are indicative of your willingness to engage with industries, large and small. And that ultimately works to the benefit of the Army and to the defense industry. So thank you very, very much for doing that, Dr. Jette. And I hope you will all join me in a virtual round of applause for Dr. Jette for his comments today. Now, before we wrap up today, let me remind you of a couple of upcoming events. This Wednesday, June 10th, join us, please, for AUSA's new program, Thought Leaders. And we'll feature this first time with General Mike Murray, the commander of United States Army Futures Command, Wednesday, June 10th. Next Monday, June 15th, we'll have the Thought Leaders seminar with General Martin Dempsey, United States Army retired, former Army Chief of Staff, former Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and talking about his latest book, Monday, 15 June. And our next noon report will feature General Paul Funk, Commander of the United States Army Training and Doctrine Command. That'll take place right here, virtually, on the 30th of June. For more information about these events or any upcoming AUSA events, just go to our website, ausa.org. Once again, let me express our deep appreciation for today's sponsor, SOS International. And Mr. Setien and your team, thank you very much. The simple fact is we can't do events like this without sponsorships from great companies like yours. So thank you very much. Finally, let me thank all of you who are AUSA members. It's hard for me to believe, but there may be some of you watching in who are not yet AUSA members. I would encourage you to remedy that and either join or renew your membership. Again, just go to ausa.org. It's the simplest way to do that. Help us support soldiers. Help us be a voice for the Army by joining AUSA. So thank you all again for joining us today for AUSA's Noon Report. Dr. Jette, thank you, sir, for your continued service and for joining us here today at AUSA. Thanks, everyone, and let's have a great Army Day.